So I wanted to kind of start with you in a bit of a creative and it's a bit of an esoteric topic, but it's related in some ways to your work, and I'm curious if you have an opinion on it. What do you think about lucid dreaming? Do you have personal experience with it? Have you studied it? In what ways does it relate to your thinking about everything you're doing?
I do have some experience with it, and I have studied it a bit. And from an anatomical perspective, essentially, we are opening a pathway that runs between the higher centers of the prefrontal cortex, higher neocortex, the new cortex, and deeper levels. And so we can train ourselves because there's an anatomical pathway there for us to have that experience. And being able to be consciously aware and essentially alert of the experience of dreaming can be quite profound.
Hmm.
And past that, though, I don't have a lot to say about it other than I see sleep as particularly after I experienced my hemorrhage,
Hmm.
my brain was very busy. It was like a soap opera going on inside of my brain because I was lucid dreaming constantly.
Hmm.
And at that point, I didn't like it because I would wake up exhausted. Who are these people? Why am I caring about this soap opera inside of my head? Why would anybody want to pay attention during this state unless they're able to use another part
Mm.
of their brain in order to kind of guide and manipulate the storyline? So,
Hmm.
at which point, then I could see how it could become an effective tool in how we organize information and how we create relationships in our awake life based on what we have created in our sleep cycle.
Wow, fascinating. One of the reasons I asked this question is because part of the experience I've had with lucid dreaming, and I'm not a hardcore practitioner, but I have some experience with it. And the way it started was I actually helped start the lucid dreaming club at Google while I was there. That's when I started getting really into it. And through that experimentation, there were a few instances that I can count on my hand where when I became lucid, I had a depth of experience that I've never had anywhere else in my life. Some people have this type of experience. I think it really relates to the experience that you've described in your work. It was an experience that felt like a connection with the divine. That moment of lucidity, of consciousness, and then maintaining it and staying in it, and the connectedness that I felt, it felt very right brain, as you might say,
Mhm.
in your work. And so, or right hemisphere. So, do you think there are correlations between these various states in which these various states of, they're ecstatic states, right? Some people experience them with psychedelics these days. That's become very popularized. Are there connections between these states? Because I know that you talk about, and I can't wait to dig into this just concept of inner peace in our waking lives,
Mhm.
not needing some sort of psychedelic or to become obsessed with lucid dreaming or something like that in order to get there. Do you see, though, correlations between these various states? Do you think that they're ultimately, we're all arriving at a similar place but using a different vehicle?
I do. You know, every ability we have, so even our ability to experience euphoria, is because we have brain cells that are designed to have us have that experience. So whether we tap into that because of a trauma, which is what happened to me, or through the use of a drug that is going to stimulate generally it's not stimulating that group of cells, but it is inhibiting other cells that are blocking our ability to have that other experience. However, we get there, we're there because we're wired to have that experience.
Mm.
So, if you might find it through lucid dreaming, you might find it through a trauma, you might find it through a hallucinogenic, you might find it because it's right there and we're wired to have that experience. And then if it's in our brain and it's a group of cells, we can actually then train ourselves to quiet what we understand is blocking or creating that inhibition so that we can step into that consciousness at any time because it's always there.
Why, if we're wired for it, why
We're
has
wired
it
for it.
why has it become so difficult? Why are there so many things in the way that
Yes,
prevent us from so many people even ever even being aware
right,
of it in their entire lives? There
right,
seems to be so much in the way in
right.
modern society. Why is that?
Well, I think if you look at the brain, as I look at the brain, we have two emotional groups of cells, one in each hemisphere. So, emotion is about bringing information in about the present moment, processing it in the right here, right now, experiential. What does it feel like? What does it feel like right now where you are? What does the temperature of the air feel like? What is how much humidity is in your air? What does it feel like to wear your clothing? What does it feel like to jump into the ocean and feel that salt water in your hair and all against your body? What does it feel like? What is the experience of the present moment? And that is bringing information in and processing it through that right emotion. Through the left emotion, all that information is going to come in, and that group of cells has a perception of past and future. So it's going to bring information in about the present moment, same information, and it's going to compare it to anything we've ever existed in our past. And it's going to have an emotional response by definition. So if I am holding a resentment against you for something you did 3 weeks ago, then it's that group of cells that is saying, oh my gosh, it's Arman. I'm not very happy with him. So I'm going to let him know all about it. So that's that group of cells. And then we have the left thinking tissue, which is our conscious mind. It is our ability to interact with the external world in a functional way. We all know how to tap into our type A, perfectionist, orderly, get
Hmm.
it done personality. But in that right hemisphere, in that thinking tissue, that's the group of cells that is always on. It's always available underneath all the noise
Hmm.
of the emotion of the present moment, the emotion of the past and future, and my relationship with the external world. And that makes sense then if I take a medication or I have trauma to my left hemisphere, it
Hmm.
wipes out those cells that are inhibiting my ability to have that ongoing experience. Or I take a medication or a drug that's going to quiet that left
Hmm.
brain and open up the expansiveness of that right thinking tissue. Or I'm going to be asleep. I'm going to have this lucid experience that is very
Hmm.
visual, very experiential, and I feel open and expansive because I don't exist as an individual in my sleep world. I have a sense of myself, but I don't have the boundaries of where I begin and where I end, and I'm not
Hmm.
interacting with the external world. So, the best way to describe it is it's the blue sky that is always there. And then different kinds of clouds come in, the white fluffy clouds of fun and interesting and play in that right brain emotion, and then those darker clouds of our left emotion. And then just, okay, let's analyze them and name the types that they are, and make a judgment as to whether or not I'm happy about that or not in that left brain. So it's there. We can tap into it. But first of all, knowing that it's always there, I think is helpful.
Hmm.
And then figuring out, well, what's in the way of our finding access to it is the other part. How do I jump into it just like that? Well, what do? I go to nature, right? When we're in
Hmm.
nature, we become open, we become expansive, we move into that present moment experience where it's not all about the me, the I, and mine in that left brain. Instead, it's about, oh my gosh, I'm alive. I'm alive. The wonder of I'm alive, the gratitude of I'm alive. And that is the key to finding your way into that part of your brain.
So the nature example, I absolutely from personal anecdotal experience agree. There's something that a mentor of mine introduced me to called nature deficit disorder. There's a real thing happening here, especially with children. Obviously, we love to blame technology. It is the enemy of today in so many ways, and yet it's very much a part of ourselves and our future. But there is a very clear issue here, and there's physiological effects that seem to occur in children when they have this deficit. So when we go into nature, that's one example. What are some other examples of practical ways which you can achieve that and quiet those cells?
So I think that first of all, being aware of your brain, and I of course have a little model here,
Love
and
it.
knowing that the left brain is an amazing structure. It that thinking tissue has a group of cells that defines the boundaries of where I begin and where I end.
Hmm.
So if I'm I mean, I that's how I know this is my face, and this is not my face, these glasses, even though they live on my
It's
face all day
useful. You
long.
need you need these cells.
I have to have those cells, and those
Yes.
are the cells that went offline for me, was that whole left hemisphere. So I lost me, the individual. With that comes language, and part of language is my ability to say I am Joe
Yes.
Bolte Taylor. I'm an individual. I'm separate from you. And these are the boundaries of where I begin and where I end. And even if you're right next to me, you're separate from me. And I have to perceive myself as the individual if I'm going to be a functional individual in the world who's an independent thinking, feeling entity. I'm not an ant, which is sharing some form of, I'm just a part of a mass, part of a collective. I am a human. I have individuality. But if you wipe out that individuality, then you still have a present moment experience of the present moment that is both in emotional limbic tissue as well as in that thinking tissue. And if I know that, then I can practice just shifting myself away from the consciousness that I'm all about me. How do I do that? I tame down all the things that are about the me, the mine,
Hmm.
in relationship to that rational brain that feels the need to create order in the external world. I set that down. I go in nature. If we can't get to nature, how can I do that? I can still look out a window. And if
Hmm.
I can look out a window and see what's between me and whatever is over there, even if it were a building or a fire hydrant or it was a parking lot, I can look and I can actually look at the energy of the space in between, especially on a hot day. One of my favorite ways when I'm in a city is to watch the steam coming up off of the cement. And
Hmm.
I essentially shift the consciousness of me, the individual, from my brain and me into being that energy as it moves off of that parking lot. I also do it if there's a tree nearby. I
Hmm.
can look out and I can take my vision and make it so that my vision is not focused on the trees. I'm not analyzing the trees with my left brain. What kind of tree is that? Look at those leaves. Are the leaves flipped over? Is it going to rain? I'm not making that conversation. Instead, I'm looking at the tree. I'm focusing a bit in front of the tree so that I'm actually picking up the movement, the big picture movement, because the right hemisphere is that big picture. So I'm looking at the overall movement without analysis, and I don't make myself become the tree. I become the energy that moves the tree. And that's a choice. We have that ability. And the more we practice these kinds of things, the more we practice shifting out of the detail of me, the mind, the
Hmm.
detail, what I want, what is, who am I unhappy with, what's my past, what's my fear of the future, all that. When I get out of that, I allow myself really in the present moment to be. And in the absence of that ego, in the absence of the me and the mind and the what's right and what's not right and how do I want it to be and what do I need and all that stuff, in the absence of that, the present moment is a perfect moment because
Mm.
there is no judgment. There is no right or wrong or good or bad. There's simply the present moment. And in that frame of mind, I feel creative because I don't have the left brain saying, well, that's wrong. And I want, if I want to color, it doesn't have to look like that. And I can make my leaves blue instead of green because it doesn't have the left brain saying, no, leaves are green. You have to make them like this and you have to color inside of the lines. So we become creative and
Yes.
innovative and possibility based, and it's delicious. And because it's not just me, the individual, I want to play with you. And it's like, okay, let's go do this together and let's figure out something. Let's share ideas and possibilities. And then that's where our genius comes in because
Mm.
we're thinking out of the box. And the
Hmm.
box is that left brain judgment.
Oh, thank God for people like you.
I knew we'd like one another. I could
Oh,
just tell. It's like,
thank
oh,
God.
yeah.
I mean, what a refreshing way to bring. It's funny because you're dancing in a sense as you're speaking between these states where you are who you are, and you're bringing a scientific perspective to these states of being essentially that are the most ancient pursuit of all life. Like everything has ever been about transcendence and achieving a state of being as much as possible in the now. And you're able to, not only do you have such increased empathy because you've been through something, a trauma, that you understand it and then you have firsthand experience of it, but you've dedicated your life to studying this stuff and then putting out this material that takes such a tremendous amount of work and research to gather and put together. I typically wait later to ask this, but why? Why do you do this? What
I'm
really is the
alive.
driver?
I'm alive, in the consciousness of my right brain, which is where I spend most of my life. That is my value structure. My value is of the right brain, which is we are a collective whole. We are a human species in relationship to one another and in relationship to this beautiful planet that we live on. And I truly believe our number one job as living beings on this planet is to love one another. How do I bring the best of me into the collective of humanity? How do I take my experience of whatever my experience is and try to sort through whatever I can sort through in order to bring something into the collective that can help our species evolve? And I truly believe that as we are evolving creatures, when we look at other mammals, the difference between a mammal and a reptile is this lower limbic tissue, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the anterior cingulate gyrus, giving information to that prefrontal cortex. So that's the limbic system, and we share that with other mammals, and it's bilateral. We have two amygdala, two hippocampi, two anterior cingulate gyri. And then the difference between us and a typical mammal is this addition of this new tissue. So, what happens over eons of time for the mammalian brain is the kinks get worked out between that newly added on emotional tissue with the tissue in the brain stem
Mm.
below. And then in the human comes along, and now we have this new thinking tissue. So we're working the kinks out between our new thinking tissue and the emotions below bilaterally. And
Mhm.
then we have this thinking that is so different between the two hemispheres. So we're working the kinks out between the left and the right thinking tissue, as well as the left and the right emotional tissue. So we're a piece of art in process. We are not a finished masterpiece. And and to me, when we understand what these groups of cells do and how to identify them in ourselves, how to seriously differentiate and refine what we are as living beings, then we will take a major leap for evolution of humanity. And isn't that the ultimate goal? What kind of a humanity will we have when we are really conscious human beings? And right now we're functioning in a state where we think our left thinking rational brain is our conscious brain, but we all know when we're unhappy and we're angry and we're anxious and we're disappointed, and we know that character inside of ourselves. Let's own that character and let's figure out, how do we soothe one another's little unhappy self, and how do I learn to use my right hemisphere, which is all love and just always present, to nurture myself. Oh my gosh, what a concept that I have the power to self-soothe my own self out of my own funk, just like that. I mean, oh my gosh, imagine the decency of humanity that will evolve when we actually start really taking some accountability for what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and what we're projecting out into the world. How could I not do what I'm doing? How could I not?
You mean that's better than just keeping myself a victim and waiting for somebody else to fix my triggered state?
Exactly.
I can soothe myself.
Oh my gosh, what a concept. Exactly.
You
And
talk about
from the
this
moment
90. Go ahead.
yeah, from the moment we think a thought, it stimulates an emotion, it stimulates a physiological response from the beginning to the end of it flooding through me and flushing out of me, less than 90 seconds. Oh my gosh, what a concept. Okay, I'm triggered. Okay, he got to me. All right, I'm feeling like, I'd like to go chew on something. Yeah, not very pretty, not very nice. I'd like to get loud. I'd like to go on the attack. I feel like a caged animal. Less than 90 seconds. It's like, okay, feel that. I'm capable of processing that level of hostility, and I can direct it with venom and energy externally, or internally with self-loathing or not feeling worthy or whatever that is. Or I can say, he got me. Okay, 90 seconds. Feel it, observe it, watch it flush out of me. And it's like,
I say it's
when
like
I
watching
hook
it
in,
burn. It's like letting it
exactly.
burn.
And when
Yeah.
I hook into that, I've given you my power. It's like, I don't want to give you my power. I want to own my own power. I want to be who I am, and I can exist in the presence of you and your ugly hostility, like everything that's going on in our society right now. It's like a bunch of pent up animals coming out of the cage,
Yeah,
and we're
it
all
is.
just ready to bite one another. And it's like, you can come and you can try to bite me, but it's like, I don't have to react. I have some ability. I don't have to be running on automatic. We have choices. And better understanding, what are my choices? Well, my left hemisphere can look and say, well, you're safe, you're okay. I mean, you're not physically, got something that's biting you. So then I can come in and I can just be loving, and I can just hold a space and try not to make you want to hit me, but I can hold that space for you. And then it's like, once you run through your 90 seconds, you'll either decide you're not getting the response you want and you'll stop, or you'll decide, okay, well, I want to go play. Let's go back to the ball game.
I mean, no wonder, we understand each other, because I can't imagine doing anything else either. I think all I'm doing is playing my little part in not just proliferating these ideas by speaking to people like you, but through my own experience, in my own way of understanding that I can actually own this experience and imagine what the world would look like if at an individual level we began to acquire the tools and understand how to engage with one another in civil ways, because there's some very important conversations to have. And if every single one of those is going to trigger some childhood memory or a recent event that gets you into fear or anxiety, we're never going to get anywhere, ever, whatsoever. And so really what you're talking about in so many ways is this rebalancing, this rebalancing toward Because I wonder, one of the things I wonder about is, would it be unhealthy to stay in that connected, loving, transcendent state too much? Would that, in and of itself, in other words, become boring? The banality of that, would that then require us to go back into the individual? This is me, this is my name. How do we balance those two? Because there's clearly an imbalance right now.
Right. Yes, we are currently skewed to the left hemisphere. And yes, we absolutely have to. We have a whole brain. I mean, if we have a whole brain, isn't the ultimate goal whole brain living?
Yes.
None of them are bad. They're all actually fantastic. I mean, I could be living out here on this boat. I could just like totally exist in the blissful euphoria of nature, do my paddle boarding, do this, do that, enjoy this,
Right.
enjoy that. But I become a completely non-functional human being. I have to have
Yes.
a left hemisphere. And when I experienced that stroke and I lost my left thinking tissue, which is my rational mind in the external world, and I lost my emotional past, well, that I have to say was rather nice. But I started a new one, what
Yeah.
I was like hit the reset button on that one. So she's back, but she's different. She's not about my past pre-stroke. Now she's she began again at the time of the stroke, and that's been about 20 years. So she's back online. I know what she's like. I know what she feels like. I know how to essentially nurture her when she happens. And in the meantime, I know my playful self, and I know my connected to all that is self. So I call this a brain huddle,
Mm.
bringing these four different characters into a huddle. I see these four parts of my brain as my brain's team. And I want to be able to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next in an instant by choice. And I think once we all get to that, then we start living our lives in a completely different way based on the values of the right hemisphere, which is the love and the openness and the connectedness, but using the creativity and the innovation of that right hemisphere, and then using the tools of that left hemisphere to get it done in the external world, because we have to be functional in the external world, or we're not serving our purpose. In order for me to have my life to have meaning, it's great to just hang out on a boat and be out in the middle of beauty all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not serving my purpose. It's serving a renewal and a refreshing. It allows me to
Mm.
come into the world with a determined idea of what do I want to create in the external world, but I have to have the left hemisphere in order to do that. And then I have this group of cells in the emotion that is designed to protect me.
Right.
And I have to be able to love that part of me, and the more I love that part of me, the more that part of me feels held, so it's triggered less often. But when it
Mm.
is triggered, I don't have to engage automatically in that reactivity. And brain cells are cells in circuit, and the more often you run a circuit, the stronger it gets. So if I can strengthen these other parts of my brain when I am triggered, I can call this brain huddle, and it's like, little one, we got you. We're still here. Yeah, all the energy in the brain has pretty much gone to you, but we're
Mm-hmm.
here and we're available. Character in the left hemisphere can come in and say, are we safe? Is there something I need to do to fix something? No, we're okay. I'm just unhappy. Character, what I call character four, my right thinking character, can come in and say, I got you, little one. I love you. That little one is character two. My little unhappy. I got you. We're here. What do you need? Do you need me to hold you? Do you need me to listen to you? What do you need? And then little character three is the emotion of the present moment going, but it's a perfect moment. I just want to go play. Come on, little unhappy self. Let's go explore. I just saw a snake go by. Let's go look at it. And then we've got all these different characters communicating with one another in a one whole brain. And it's like,
Mm.
wow, what a concept.
I love that you've created these four characters. It's brilliant because it just allows the layperson to make sense of so much of the depth of, like I said, the research of everything that you've done. I love your new book, Whole Brain Living. I'm about like a quarter of the way right now. What is the section or chapter that you wish everyone would read? The one part that you wish was like, if this just got out and we all just started right here and we all fully understood this one concept, then my work would feel good about that. What would that be?
It's the brain huddle. The power of knowing the first, you have to know the four characters, and the four characters are anatomically based. I mean, these aren't four characters that I just made up and had a psychological paradigm come in. These are anatomically correct, and the beauty actually is that they match perfectly Jung's four archetypes. Well, right. Of course they do. Why can we relate to the archetypes is because we're anatomically programmed for all four. But in that thinking, the character one, A-type personality, left thinking that interacts in the external world is the only one that's conscious. And that leaves 3/4 of the brain unconscious. And it's like, well, what if it wasn't? What if we actually knew those characters? And we do know those characters. And the only reason I know those characters is because I lost 2 of them. I lost their inhibition over the present moment emotion. Well, what is that? Well, that's a little playful, happy self, because the present moment doesn't have any of the judgment. Here I was, my left hemisphere, I've completely lost. I'm half paralyzed. I have no language. I have no sense of self. And I'm sitting on my couch with this big smile on my face. And my mother is going, "Child, why are you so happy?" I mean, it was clear I should have been devastated by anyone's judgment, by my own judgment using my left hemisphere, which was gone. I should have been devastated. You know, I was a Harvard prof doing research and teaching. And I mean, I was climbing the ladder. I mean, it was a great ladder. Boom, all gone. Suddenly a warm body in the breathing body in the bed is what my mother called me. Wow. And it was like, well, I didn't have any of that left brain judgment, and I was alive. I survived it. I was so detached from normal reality, but I didn't die that day. I was alive. And this little part of me was so happy I was alive. And then there's this right thinking tissue that is like big as the universe, you know, connected to the infinite cosmos, going, what do we do with this? What do we do with this? I mean, this is magnificent, but what do we do with this? And then the left hemisphere is just offline. And it's like, well, I could exist like this forever until my body dies, which could have been decades because I was in good shape. Or it's like, we try to recover. We try to understand. Rah, 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 rah. We watch people's mouths. We try to focus. We listen for sounds. It's like we learn language. So I had to learn to read, write, and walk and talk and all of it again. I mean, I was just completely detached. I did not know what a mother was. I didn't even know what a mother was, much less who my mother was. I mean, I had no information. And it was like, okay, well, this is what I do now. I try to recover. And I got out of my own way emotionally because that character 2, who would have been critical of, oh my God, I fell off the Harvard ladder, da da da, I'm less than I used to be, and da da da, she had no voice. She was quiet. I had to rebuild her. And then I had to rebuild the scholastics of my left thinking tissue. So these are biologically defined for each of us. We each have these 4 characters. Get to know those 4 characters, get them in a brain huddle. To me, the brain huddle is the healing of humanity. That's what it is. It's the healing of humanity. Sounds grandiose. I'm sorry. I don't mean for it to, but it's true. Once we understand this magnificent organ inside of our heads, who's who, we start taking a little responsibility. We start celebrating. Oh my gosh, you have the ability to step into your blissful euphoria at any moment. What a concept. Go do it. You know, go find that part of yourself. Go meet that part of yourself. You don't need drugs. You don't need trauma. You don't need to do it when you're lucid dreaming. You can actually go stand on a beach. You live in San Diego. Go stand on a beach and let your heart open and
Mm.
expand and feel yourself, feel that beautiful magnificence. And then the glory of, oh my gosh, I'm as big as the universe and I'm a speck of dust all at the same time. You know, I'm the most important
My
thing that
favorite
exists
feeling.
in the universe and I could be dead in an instant. I mean, we're amazing. Let gratitude and awe and wonder and still inside of your body. We know those feelings. Go be that for a minute or
Oh,
five
my
or
God.
10.
Wow. I mean, that is what life is about. We've all experienced these feelings, and they're very fleeting. And ultimately, I think
Exactly.
what you're driving at here is we have a choice. We have a
Yes.
choice, and we can take responsibility and not wait for these things to happen by chance and create them in our
Yeah.
lives intentionally.
Yeah.
I went through something nowhere near. By the way, didn't that take like 7, 8 years for you to recover? Something like that?
Took 8 years for me to rebuild my left hemisphere.
Unbelievable. I can't even imagine. Well, I went through something that took about 2 weeks. I had a concussion, and obviously, many people have been through this. I've always been a soccer player my whole life, and competitively. And as you might guess, it was the last competitive soccer game I played. I went up for a header, and the goalkeeper
Mm-hmm.
came out to kind of punch the ball out. And instead of
Yeah.
punching the round ball, he punched my round head.
Yeah.
And I basically went out pretty quickly, but kind of came to very, very quickly as well. And the effects of this in the moment were just, I felt very off. Everything was bad. So I went to the ER. And I will never forget the conversation I had with the doctor in the ER. She was this young lady, and she sat next to me on the hospital bed. And she goes, "Hey, Armand, um, I felt like shit in that moment, and she could really tell. So she was like, "Oh, he's in a vulnerable state. I'm gonna take advantage." And she said, "Armand, do you speak or write at all in your work or in general?" I said, "That's literally all I do. That's what I do for a living." And she goes, "Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. If this happens to you one more time, even, you may never be the same. You may never be able to speak or write the same way again. I don't even know the severity of how bad it could be.
Wow.
It's a complete who knows." And even
Wow.
now, and I go, "Well," and then she really got, and I said, "Well, what about now? Like, what about with this one event?" And she was like, "Could be a week, could be four, could be forever. You could never be the same." I was
Wow.
just shocked. And then I thought, no, 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 it's all going to go away like tomorrow. For 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I was, as we know, in a state of rage, uncontrollable,
Mm.
reactive rage, confusion. Who am
Mm.
I? Was a question I was.
Mm.
There was actually a conflict between who I knew myself to be and who I
Mm.
felt like who I
Mm.
had become. And then that
Wow.
conflict was creating this pain. And then the pain
Mm.
was creating an emotional outburst at times,
Mm.
anxiety,
Yeah.
depression. I mean,
Sure.
it was awful. And so my
Wow.
respect for the brain since
Yes.
that moment has been, oh my God.
Yes.
I mean, I still play. I played last night, but it's like, hey guys, let's have some fun, kick the ball around. It's not, oh my God, I
Hmm.
must score this goal.
Right.
And I just value it now. And so I can't even imagine going through what you've gone through. Because one of the things that I'm sure you've seen as well is when a person goes through some form of trauma, loss in their life, some experience of suffering, there tends to be this um, inverse correlation to gratitude for life. Especially
Hmm.
people who've been through these near death
Right.
experiences. How would you tell somebody who hasn't been through a near death experience
Hmm.
to develop and cultivate that awe and thirst for life and to develop that balance that you write about
Hmm.
and work on?
Yeah. Um, wow. First of all, wow, that was a big wow for you. I mean, that was your eye
It was my wake
opening.
up.
Oh my gosh, I need to value and tend to and care for this precious thing inside of my head because I'm completely dependent on it for my livelihood and my life. quality of life. So, and we go through that. And you took with it the lessons. A lot of people have these traumatic experiences, and they're fine again. And I could have set mine aside and gone back to being more left brain dominant again, and it was like, no, I don't have those values anymore. It's not all about me. It's not all about materialism. It's not all about money. It's not all about all those motivating factors for me raising myself in that hierarchy of humanity anymore. It's like, no, that's behind me from that perspective. And 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 because now I care about the bigger picture of us, and all those other things follow if I have that left brain that can perform the will of my right hemisphere through the value of my right hemisphere. And my life is going to attract different things. And I think a big piece of it is trust. I trust that when I make decisions now, I make them based on my bigger picture. I don't make it based on, well, how's this going to serve me? How many books am I going to sell, or who might I meet, and what am I going to get from this? It's like, do I want to travel? If I want to travel because I want to travel and I see the bigger picture of the value of it, over, what am I saying yes to? I think we have to look in our lives and say, what are we saying yes to? It's because it's not all about what we're saying no to. It's about, no, I'm committed to my time here on the water. I trust that this book is going to do what the book is going to do because I'm like that. I trust the universe, and it's, I can go and push it and do this, that, and the other. Or I can do it differently. And it's like, I'd rather be here and have meaningful conversations with someone like you who is going to, whatever your energetic is, it really becomes about the energy. It doesn't become about the me. So it's hard for people because we have been brought up in especially the boomer population here in the US. The boomers have been brought up in order to really compromise our integrity of self and of the collective for me and the mind and the materialism. So we now have a society that is built structurally by the boomer population, but they've had now the millennial population, and the millennials, they've had technology, and technology has taught them left brain skills through right brain tools. For example, boomers learned two plus three is five. We memorized it. It was a bunch of tables. So it's just on rote memorization for us. It's just abstract data that we crunch. But millennials saw 2 chickens plus 3 cows equals 5 animals. Well, that's how the right brain learns. So now we have a millennial population that is more right brain dominant. They like to do things collectively. They've been doing things as groups the whole time. Their reward is with one another. They want to enjoy their job and how they're spending time. And then when they're ready to move on, they're ready to move on. Well, the boomers in their world are saying, hey, no, we need loyalty. We need you to be willing to slave for 60 or 80 hours a week. We need you to wear those dark circles under your eyes like badges of honor, so that you can get that trip to Hawaii. And the millennials are going, no, I don't think so. And so now we're having this collision between these different populations of who we are. So I think as a society, we are reevaluating how do we do it differently so that we find more balance inside of our own lives. The boomers are the population that's going to really have to learn the value. But at the same time, the boomers, what's the percentage of divorce? How many of the boomers have lost their relationships They traded in the first wife, the mother of their children, for a younger model, because again,
Mm-hmm.
of the prestige and of the whatever that is, the cars that they drive, the houses, the size of these
Mm-hmm.
mansions, and then the millennials are going, yeah, it doesn't bother me to live with my mom and dad. They still got the space, and I want to have an experience. I care about what my life feels like. So I think it's a matter of this. How do we find this balance as a society in really understanding that our number one job really is to love one another? How do I do that with less judgment, less harshness, less competition, and what more of a collaborative consciousness? And wasn't it interesting the way that the pandemic has influenced everybody's thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Because now even the boomers are saying, I liked working from home.
Yeah.
I liked being able to be available when my kids came over for dinner. I liked being able to have quality time with my spouse. I liked it. And then the millennials are going, well, I don't know if I liked it so much because I felt isolated and I'm exhausted on Zoom, and I need my pals, and
So funny.
there's no division between when I'm working and when I'm playing, and it's like, so I'm kind of on overload. And it's been fascinating
It's
just
super
watching
fascinating.
different populations based on their brain characters, how people have managed what's going on. And then the level of anxiety has gone way up, and the
Yes.
millennial population is an extremely highly anxious population anyway, because they know they don't fit into the boomer world.
Right.
So if I don't fit into my parents' world, I can't get their approval, which means they're not soothing my own little character too. And
Mm.
because of technology, I can now use technology to get me out of my funk, but I'm not really training myself to get out of my own character too. So I don't have those coping skills. So, the to me, society is the macrocosm of what is going on in the microcosm of these cells inside of our head and the relationship and interplay.
So much of what you're talking about is significant from a psychological perspective. And I know that isn't necessarily maybe it is your intent. Maybe it's a secondary sort of benefit to your work because you deeply care about these things at a collective level, at an individual level. And it seems like a lot of what you're driving at is that a lot of the evolution that needs to take place on a collective level happens at the individual level by doing this work, by understanding the characters, by doing the brain huddle, and it's not so much you're sitting there going like, let's go through all your past trauma and all your emotional issues. You're saying this happens now. It's here and now. In each
Right.
moment we have a choice. If we have the
Right.
tools, if we understand the way it all works. And that is a very psychological perspective as well. What's your thoughts and feelings on that?
Well, I think that the way I look at this is the first true marriage between the anatomy of the brain and psychological behavioral outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
so I look at it like it's a tree, and our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors are the leaves, and they're out there flopping around in the world. And then at the root of that, though, in the roots are the cells.
Yes.
And if we truly want to heal a trauma, out here, okay, well, we're going to get some of that. If you have a tree and a tree is sick, you might treat the leaves a little bit because a little bit will go down, but you got to go to the root of the problem. And if the root of the problem is that my little character too is holding a resentment or holding anger and hostility, or is high on alarm alert all the time, I need to go and I need to look at those cells, and I need to look at the other cells inside of my brain and say, how can I use my whole brain in order to self-soothe and help heal that trauma? And the trauma itself, to me, the pain of the past belongs in the past. Now, I need to go and explore it, and I need to reflect on it, but I don't think need to go do it by reliving it, because if I relive it, then I'm just strengthening that circuitry over and over and
Ooh,
over again. And how's it ever going to heal? I need the energy to dissipate. So I had trauma in my past. I had trauma as a child in relationship with a brother who ended up having a mental illness. I had trauma when I was born and thrust out of my mother's womb, and all that beautiful symbiotic relationship was gone. So we all have trauma. I don't need to go relive it over and over again. I need to acknowledge it. I need to experience an awareness of it. I need to evaluate, what have I learned from it? How do I protect myself from that happening again? And how do I use the rest of me to become a thriving, healthy human being, learning from my past? And be in the present, live in the present, own my power in the present. And my power in the present is right here and right now. It's not in the past. And when we pray in the present. When we love in the present. When we breathe in the present. We always have the power to bring our mind to the present moment by focusing on that ongoing train of breath. We have that power. Use that power. I don't feel like I need to routinize and strengthen that circuitry of trauma any more than is necessary to learn from it, to grow because it happened.
I have to point something out about you, and it's a pattern I've noticed with so many extremely incredible people who have look at the energy that you have. There's so much energy, and you just said the word power so many times. You talked about presence. You talked about power. You didn't say the word life force, but you can feel your life force.
Yeah.
I from my just what I've gathered, just in connecting with people like you, when I see that pattern, I notice that exact similarity. They're very in tune with themselves, with their power, with the present moment, with nature or some level of awe or flow. They're in a state of flow. I mean, you're basically in a state of flow as you're speaking right now. I can tell. There's this, and flow, of course, is this incredible infatuation with the present moment that only arrives when you're deeply, deeply in tune with the task at hand. And for me, it often happens in situations like this, just having a conversation and speaking, needing to stay on my toes. And it's such an exquisite state. How would you describe that energy? Because I feel that when I look at certain people, I look at that person and I'm like, this person's light bulb is could last seemingly forever. They look like they have unlimited energy. There's no fuel tank with them. It's like the act itself is constantly fueling the tank, for lack of a better analogy.
Yeah. I think it's my top priority to be a healthy human being. And being a healthy human being means a lot of different things. First of all, sleep is a number one priority for me. It is precious to me. I will go to sleep when I'm tired, and I will wake up when I'm ready to wake up.
Same.
I give myself that gift. That's a gift. And whatever it is, some nights it's more than others, and but it's a priority for me. And my anybody who's around me, they know that they don't want to wake me up, because if they do, I move straight into my little unhappy little character too, and nobody wants the wrath of Jill, because it has the same energy. It's just not so pleasant. So so I pay very close attention, and I honor sleep. Sleep is the opportunity for the entire body to heal itself. Everything happens in the body physiologically when we are asleep in order to flush out the day. And the day is processing literally trillions of bits of data moment by moment by moment. if we're not well rested, you're not going to show up with this kind of energy. My mind is very clear. I pay very close attention to what I eat. I eat a lot of green vegetables. It's my priority. I pay attention to how does food feel inside of my body. I love a little touch of chocolate and some kind of a nut butter. But I
Mm,
take a tiny little square if I'm in the mood for that. And that's not even on a daily basis. That might be
yeah.
really if it's a strong craving, maybe 2, maybe 3 times a week. Otherwise, I pop a few blueberries. Blueberries are filled with antioxidants. They're fantastic for me and they satisfy that sweet tooth if
Mm,
I'm having that. So I pay really close attention. And literally, I exercise all the time. My body wants
hmm.
to be on a paddleboard. It's good for me. It's good for my core. It's good for my balance. And look at where I'm paddleboarding. It's nature. It's beautiful. I live with the turtles. I live with the great blue
Wow.
heron. They're my family out here. I love it. And I let my soul expand. And I have a hydro bike that I ride on top of the water in case I actually want to, listen to a book on tape. I listen to at least 2 books on tape a week because I
Wow.
want my mind to grow. I want to, sometimes it's a novel, it's, a totally fiction, interesting exploration on another part of the planet with people of a
Mm,
culture I know nothing about. I love it. It's mindless. It allows me to just kind of be present. Or I'm listening to a book on tape, usually about the brain, something where I'm going to get educated about something that I care about. So I take total responsibility for all the parts of my life.
wow.
And we all can.
Well, can
I
I?
mean,
I'm going to
yeah.
play a character. Okay, my name is Lindsay, and
Hi,
I'm a mom
Lindsay.
of two. Hi.
Mhm.
And I don't have time for that, Dr. Jill. I have a
Yeah.
lot of responsibility. You have no
Yes, you do.
idea. I got to pay the bills. I got to work. I have a son that has soccer. And you're sitting around talking to me about being in nature and paddleboarding. How do I do that? I'm not this and that.
Lindsay, what do you do when you're watching your son play soccer? What are you doing?
I'm either watching him or checking my phone.
Yeah, you're probably checking your phone. So, first of all, that's a great point. How much time are we spending on technology? And technology is like a TV set. The TV just kind of sucks the energy right out of you. So, you might want to say, okay, how much time am I spending on my technology? How many times do I check my text or check my email?
Mm,
Well, okay, maybe I might, because I'm clearly not getting these other things that are nurturing me. And part of technology is I'm grabbing onto the train and it's dragging me down the track, right? I'm not
yes.
I'm not really having a relationship with it. It's another one of those things I'm just holding on to. So let's look at where my time is going, and kind of look at the big picture of my life, and where can I grab little bits of me back, and what does
Mm,
that mean to me? Does that mean I'd really like to go to a yoga class, twice a week? Oh my gosh, wow, I can't even imagine having the time to do that. Well, then maybe I trade out baby care with, someone in the neighborhood so that I can sneak away for an hour twice a week. What am I pumping into my blood?
mm,
How much sugar am I putting in me? How much caffeine am I putting in me? Because that just ramps me up. Well, if I'm ramped up, then I don't have the natural pauses. I'm not taking care. I'm
mm.
not taking advantage of my natural rhythms. So look at what I'm doing, because I've got 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
whether I'm a mother of 2 or 3 and I'm busy, busy, busy and blah, 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 or if I'm out here doing what I'm doing in my life. So, but what am I doing, and what can I do differently? How do I make one tiny little shift?
Mm-hmm.
How do I look at what is there and what would actually be a good replacement for being able to take a breath? How do I find my breath?
Thank you for playing along with that because I can't tell you how much I agree with you and how I think that this just starts with little pockets, little moments, little
Moments.
gifts that we give ourselves. You talked about one gift, the gift of sleep, and that you give yourself the gift of going to sleep when you want, and waking up when you want, and that's something anybody could pick up at any time. And just go to bed early enough, you can still get up when you want. I mean, there's these little gifts. Maybe it's just lighting a candle and having a moment with the candle because it brings you peace, and taking 10 deep breaths. Who doesn't have time for 10 deep breaths?
Right.
And ultimately, when you begin to introduce these habits into your life that are you and speak to you and fill you up and put you in that state of being, one day you wake up and you are on the houseboat because
Right.
you're creating this life,
Right.
and it's just one step at a
Right.
time. And so many of us sit back and we say that's inaccessible, that's
Right.
nope, that's an outlier, I don't have
Right.
that, I can't do that. And
Right.
that's that responsibility that you're
Right.
speaking to.
Well, just in Armand, just in looking at the aging population, the boomers. I'm a tail boomer, and the the biggest problem that they complain about is inadequate sleep. And they're most of them retired, and they're not the ones who have to get up and be on the schedule and deal with the children and manage that differently. That's going to be a big cultural difference in just on how old are we. But even the aged population, I mean, the half life of caffeine is like 5 hours, five to
Yeah.
7 hours. So if you drink caffeine at five in the evening with your dinner, it literally takes 10 more hours for that to get out of your bloodstream. Well, I can't sleep at night. I'm antsy. I want to go to sleep and I'm tired and I can't sleep. Well, maybe don't have any caffeine afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have that little bite of chocolate because chocolate's got a little bit of buzz in it. Paying attention to, well, I have to have my dessert after dinner. It's that sugar buzz. How long is that going to take to get out of my bloodstream? I got to watch the news, and oh my gosh, the news is bad news, and it upsets my system, and then there's that potential hurricane coming up from Florida, and so that's going to be on my doorstep in what, 12 hours, 24 hours. What do I need to do for that? So it's just, what are we feeding ourselves? Because we're constantly feeding ourselves. And if we're willing to say, I don't need to watch the evening news because it upsets me, catch the news at noon or catch the
Mm.
news in the morning. Pay attention. Give yourself time to have space before sleep. Not drinking anything, even water, 3 hours before you're going to go to bed, so that you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
wake up in the middle of the night to evacuate several times during the course of the evening. There are little steps that we all can take. So you have to look at your individual life and say, well, what might I shift? What might be a good idea for me to shift? And maybe it's taking a walk after dinner and actually getting some movement going in your body so that your digestion can really begin to process. Maybe it's saying hello to the neighbor lady.
Hmm.
Maybe it's, oh my gosh, going back to slowing our energetic down and interacting with other people and just slowing down that me, I, mine. The speed at which that left hemisphere functions, it just accelerator. It's an accelerator. When you're on it, you're just in it, in it, in it. And when you're just taking a peaceful stroll through the park, it's no race here. Take a walk with a dog,
Yeah.
borrow the neighbor's dog, take a leisurely time. Pay attention to what am I doing and what might I do differently in order to shift my reality one little choice at a time.
All of these things that you're describing ultimately seem to cultivate a strong sense of inner peace. And I think that a lot of the anxiety and fears that we have, whether they're conscious or not, are sort of rooted in a lacking of that center of inner peace. After what you've been through now and how close you've been to death, what is your relationship with death today?
My relationship is excitement. I just hope I'm awake when it happens so that I can like have that experience.
Hmm.
And because I was as far gone as one can be and still be alive.
Hmm.
And then I had to claw myself back. And what that meant was I had to give myself what I needed. I had to stay out of my own way emotionally. I had to quality sleep regularly, because it was like, oh my gosh, just paying attention at all is like overload. So, and then paying attention to what I was eating and consuming, but really honoring that I was alive. And I had no guarantee of what would I get back. I didn't try to get back to being a Harvard professor. I tried to get back language. I tried to get back understanding when other people spoke. I tried to get back rolling over so I could eventually sit up, so I could eventually stand and walk again. It was all about the try, and I was willing to try, balanced with a lot of other things that kept me out of my way. And just knowing that I've had 22 years of I call it gravy time.
Mm.
If I'd have died that day, I wouldn't have had this life. And I have to say that I truly believe that this latest book, Whole Brain Living, is the ultimate reason why I came back. This is the gift
Wow.
I was given. I wrote my Stroke of Insight. It was a beautifully received book based on the experience of the
Yes.
trauma and what that was like through the eyes of a scientist. And when I gave the TED talk, I wanted people to walk away from that with a sense of reverence for what we are as living beings. And I thought, if I revered myself, if other people revered themselves, we would revere one another, and that would lift us to a new level of reverence in how we treat one
Mm.
another. Well, clearly that didn't happen. And so for me, it was, I've had over 300,000 people write and say, how do I find that peace? How do I find that bliss? And it was like, I have no idea how to tell you to get there, because I got whacked out of this into that. And then I clawed my way back here. So I can tell you what I did to get myself back to here, but how to go from there to there,
Yeah.
I didn't have an answer. And in the meantime, the way we treat one another, the level of reverence has gone down. Our level
Yeah.
of hostility and conflict has gotten worse. And then I was giving a presentation, and I was talking about how great it is to present right now about the brain, because people love to talk about the brain, and they know about the amygdala and the hippocampi. But the fact of the matter is, we have two amygdala. And
Hmm.
there was an audible gasp in the room. And that was what I needed, because then I understood. People think we have one emotional system. If we only have one emotional system, our conflicting emotions make no sense. And if it makes no sense, how do we manage it? And it was like, oh no, we have an emotional system, experiential in the present moment, right here, right now, right hemisphere. We have an emotional, these deep traumatic experiences of our past, and all of that
Hmm.
in that left brain. And there are these four different characters. And it was like, instantaneously I realized, if people knew this, and they knew they could put them in communication in a brain huddle, their lives would change. They would make different choices, because they would know what choices they had to make. Well, okay, I have a problem. I have a choice to make. Well, what are my choices? Well, what's your character one's choice? What's your character two's choice? What's your character three's choice? All based on their values and what they care about. What's your character four's choice? Okay, well, out of all of these, which one are we collectively going to choose, like a democracy? And it's like, well, one's going to get the choice today. Or, nah, three's going to get the choice today. Oh my gosh, I make sense. I can go live a peaceful life. And then when I die, it's like I go back to character four, and it's like, I can watch my character one become quiet, and the
Mm,
external world and its meaning dissipates. And I can watch my little two heal itself, because now it's not about the past anymore. It's not about those relationships and about that time
mm,
spent. Now it's about the present moment. And the little three is saying, okay, well, I don't have any energy anymore to go get ice cream, but boy, I'd really like some ice cream. Maybe somebody will bring me some ice cream. And then somebody brings me some ice cream because I asked for it. And then that one dissipates. And then I dissolve back into the consciousness of my character four, which truly is the consciousness that I share in every cell of my body as the consciousness of that infinite universe. That's my relationship with death.
well, that's a perfect segue to my last question. Um, do you believe in God?
I believe that God is that energetic consciousness of the universe. That's how I would define God. So the left brain comes in with a storyline and says, "Okay, well, I'm comfortable calling it God." Someone else's left brain is saying, based on my structure, I'm happy calling that Allah. Some want to call that, Muhammad. Some of them want to call that Christ, the Christ light, the Christ love, whatever. I call it love. I call it the cosmic infinite being, that consciousness of all that is. And in the absence of that left brain, that's what we become, a part of that. And it's beautiful. We are so beautiful, and we have so much more power over what's going on inside of our
Hmm.
heads than we have ever been trained to know.
So beautiful. Your perspective on God reminds me of sort of Carl Sagan and his. It was, I think he referred to himself as a pantheist, but essentially, the cosmos, the universe, that oneness that is, and that we are, and how we are a part of that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And in these moments that you describe, we are at one with it. We do feel it. And I know that that question is a very loaded question because it comes with so many definitions
Yeah.
and so much history
Yeah.
and so it's a very challenging one. But I love your perspective, and I agree with you. That's something very similar to what I believe. I'm so honored that you took the time to have this conversation with me. This has been incredible. You are a hero. You are an amazing,
No.
amazing woman. And I am so grateful that you had the opportunity to continue living, being here, and putting out your work. I'm really excited about your new book. I can't wait to finish it. Everyone listening needs to get your book, Whole Brain Living, and I'm going to link to it and
Thank you.
do all kinds of things, give some away as well. And I look
Thank you.
forward to just continuing our relationship and friendship.
Thank you. Now, I knew that, with a podcast titled Flow, that we would move into the flow. And this has been absolutely delightful exploration for me as well. So thank you. It's a privilege, and I'm excited. I'm excited about who knows, because now we're connected.
That's right. Who knows? We'll
Now
see.
we're connected. Exactly.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you
Arman.
so much. Thank you.